the light went on for me. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I want to do it my way. I generally follow my heart. It sounds really corny, but whatever my heart wants.
Hey guys, welcome back. Another episode of the podcast, and if you've been with us for a while, and if we're still counting, because I'm not really still counting, but I know this is actually the 50th episode, so a bit of a landmark. It's tough to hang around for that long. Yes, I've done other episodes for Crushing Miles, so the count is actually higher than 50, but as far as this show goes, this is episode number 50, and I just want to extend my thanks to everybody that listens. I really appreciate the support, and what you've been doing for me has been working. Last week, most downloads ever. January 2020, most downloads for a month ever. We've got daily, weekly, monthly records. We're setting them all the time, so I really appreciate your support. And if you could continue to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, I would really appreciate it. Okay, just a couple more things before we get into the episode. Last week, we had a giveaway. Entering was really simple. If you wanted a giant loop zigzag handlebar bag, all you had to do was subscribe to our channel on YouTube. I will announce the winner of that contest at the end of this episode. And also don't forget about our social media channels at Bend Motorcycle Adventures on both Facebook and Instagram. And also we're on Patreon, Patreon.com/Bend Motorcycle Adventures if you want to become a patron and get access to some exclusive content. So let's jump into the show. This week's guest, Anna Baklund. She's a Pacific Northwest native. She rides off-road. She rides dual sport. She rides adventure. She's gotten into snow biking. She's been in the sport for a few years, and it's funny. We actually crossed paths back in September of 2018 up near the Canadian border. I just finished Idaho BDR, and I believe she was riding somewhere up there north of the border. So it's a really small world, and we connected on Instagram after that, I believe, and here we are now, an episode long time in the making. Let's get into it. I just want to rewind. I'm going to rewind like a year and a half and say it's a small world, because I was driving back from the Canadian border. I look over to my left, and there you were. You waved at me. I didn't know you at the time, but do you remember that?
Was that you?
Yeah.
What you guys were in? You had the trailer or something.
I just had my bike in the back of Toyota. I just finished Idaho BDR.
Okay, so I would have been coming back from Banff, I think.
Yeah, you were with,
yeah.
I think you were with somebody who had like the River City trailer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's too funny. I didn't realize, you never told me that was you, I don't think.
Oh, I thought you asked me if it was me.
Maybe I did.
It's been a while.
I don't know. I remember waving.
Yeah. And I looked over and I was like, I don't know who that is. And then I seen the trailer and recognized the logo because I've done some of their events. I was like, well, it's somebody who's into motorcycles.
And there's not too many females, so it's not super hard to figure out who it is. No.
But yeah, I think you end up messaging me or something on Instagram after, and there you go. But yeah, totally small world. I mean, I'm confident we ride a lot of the same places. I'm confident
I know we do.
A lot of the same people. But kind of starting there, I want to jump into your shoes and just ask you. You do a lot of off-road riding, and I'm curious what you've seen, because I have an opinion, a take, but I'm curious what you've seen over the past 2 to 3 years in OHV areas, good and bad.
Yeah. Gosh, in the last 2 or 3 years, I'd say there's been a lot of change actually in the OHV areas. Like you said, there's good, there's bad, but definitely noticeable since I started riding. And I say that very generally because I ride all over. So it's not just one area that's changed. It's all of them. Some of the good I'm seeing is more people are using hand signals, like let you know that they've got a group behind them. They're also stopping. Like if you need help or, you're pulled off to the side of the trail, they'll ask if you're okay. And then, quick exchange of how many people you have in your groups. I've seen a change in who's out there too. And I think this is a really great thing, seeing a lot more families and kids out. Everybody's getting involved in the sport, and it's becoming much more inclusive.
Yeah, I don't think I could argue that one either. I was the sport's got to be growing. I was back down at Power yesterday in Sublimity, and I swear half the parking lot was full of motorcycles, and like normally they've got inventory on the showroom and some that wraps around the building, but I swear half the parking lot was full of inventory too. So everything must be moving, right?
Yeah, the economy's good and people have great jobs now, and you're seeing the popularity of the sport rise. But that also means there's more people out on the trails.
There are definitely more people on the trails, no debate about that. And I'm wondering if our trail systems are really designed for this kind of use, if there are enough funds allocated, if there are enough resources allocated to keep these things in good shape. Because from my perspective, I'm seeing a lot of deterioration.
I'm wondering if the education is there on, how to ride responsibly, and what, if you spin out, what does it do to the trail? I don't think enough folks are totally aware of those things.
Sure. I don't know that. I mean, we're required here in Oregon. I can't speak for Washington. We're supposed to get this safety card, ATV safety card, if you will. Aside from that, there really is no training, right? A lot of people learn on the fly. They'll learn on gravel roads or rock pits or something like that. But I don't know that there is anything educationally out there in regard to impact or etiquette, I'll say.
No, and when you're learning how to ride, you're looking for a dual sport forum online, or maybe somebody from work. You go with somebody from work, but people aren't looking for trail maintenance, clubs and nonprofits. They're just looking for people to ride with, not to learn about the trails. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how to bring beginner riders in and explain to them that there's more to it than hopping on the bike and learning how to use the clutch and the throttle.
No, I think that's a good point, and that's I don't want to say global, but that's a kind of a systemic issue, right? There really is nothing in place there, so you get out there and you kind of learn how to ride your bike, and you just drink from the hose. You ride the trails, and you may or may not feel obligated to cut this tree out of the trail or go out and perform some maintenance like you talked about with a lot of nonprofits. There are a lot of them here in Oregon that do trail work. So I don't know that those things aren't going on, but I don't know if there's a nice funnel for getting that information out there.
Right. But if people are on social media looking at forums and looking at groups and, looking up hashtag dirt bike or women that ride, I think if more people had posts out there that were more educational, people would see that coming in, out on the internet and on social media, and they'd be like, oh, they're talking about this. They're not just talking about what oil and tires to use. They're, or you want to get into that one?
Yeah, the two most commonly asked questions ever.
Right. And then there's a string of 100 comments on it. No, you have to use this one. Oh, you're a horrible person because you use this one.
Yeah. Hate to burst everybody's bubble, but I used to just run, like car oil in my two strokes, like 1040, no issues. So I'm not really
Uh-huh.
I'm not really convinced that anyone is better than the other. Tires, I got to have the right tires. I'm very particular about tires, but oil.
Right, we're doing the same thing. Actually, we're running car oil, and we change it every 2 to 3 rides, just because we ride hard and ride so many miles. But just car oil. Sorry, Motor X. Sorry, Bel-Ray.
I mean, yeah, I get it. There's special additives, special oils for certain engines, but at the end of the day, change the stuff often. Keep an eye on your air filter, and for the most part, you really won't have any issues with your bike. I mean, those are the mainstays of maintenance.
Yeah, uh, my first bike, I wasn't told about the air filter. I didn't know that was a thing. Right, I a complete beginner. Never ridden a motorcycle before. Went out and bought one and started learning how to ride. And nobody told me about the air filter. So that went, oh God, a year and a half. And I
Kept
rode,
running though.
it's a Suzuki. You can run it into a tree and thing's ready to go.
So that's interesting. I've actually had a lot of requests from listeners to talk to people who were new to the sport and what that was like. Now you're not new to the sport, but
Kind of.
how did you kind of, yeah, for a few years, how did you kind of transition from not riding into somebody who's pretty much out there every weekend riding single track or snow bikes or whatever? We'll get into all that.
It was really simple. I had a boyfriend that had a Husky Terra 650, and he threw me on the back, and we went up some gravel roads, and we rounded a corner, and mountain is just staring us in the face. I don't think I had been that close to a mountain before. And we pop open a couple beers, and the light went on for me. Uh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I want to be outside, and the bikes give you a way to get there and go farther. And so we crushed up our beer cans, threw them in the backpack, and went back into town, and it changed my life. That one little 2-up ride wasn't even very long that day, changed my life. And without any help, without any advice from anyone, including the boyfriend, I went out and bought a bike. And I'm at the dealer, and I'm in my Nissan Altima, and I signed the papers, and I called my dad. I said, Dad, I need a ride. I need you to come pick me up. He goes, why? I'm like, well, um, I, I just bought a bike. And he kind of paused, and he goes, you bought a bicycle? No, Dad, I bought a motorcycle. And he said, okay, I'll put on my shoes, and hung up and came down. He came down, and I thought, I'm going to get a lecture. I'm going to get a lecture. He's going to tell me I'm being irresponsible, I'm being crazy. And we loaded up my bike in the back of the truck, and he asked me 2 questions. He asked me, can you afford this? I said, yeah. And he said, is it going to make you happy? And I said, yeah. And that's it. I started riding regularly and out riding the DR200, and made a big decision and bought a KTM 690 Enduro sight unseen.
Yeah, you don't mess around. You went from a 200 to the big 690. You're like, you know what? I think I got this. Let's go all the way.
Oh, no, 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 no. I knew I did not have it, but I didn't want to outgrow it so fast. I wanted to have this bike for a long time. And the first ride out was scary. I could barely touch on the DR. I was used to flat footing. I'm fairly tall. I'm 5'8", and I have a 33-inch inseam. But even even the 690 is a little tall stock. And I went out and rode it on some street tires. And one of the first rides out, somehow, my buddies convinced me to go in the snow and ice on brand new to me 690, and I can't touch, and I got street tires. So I went. I went down a couple times, but I've not stopped riding that bike. That bike, I kind of described that bike like a wife, right? She's best friend. She's always there for you. She's got your back. You guys can go on long trips together and never get sick of each other. She's the wife.
Okay. That's kind of, I mean, that's your dual sport, your adventure bike, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, what an indoctrination to riding the bike. Hey, let's go ice and snow. You know.
Full send, why not?
Why not? So, you've obviously come a long way. Do you credit like the people that you've ridden with, you know, helping you develop your skills, time, experience? You know, what do you think owns the lion's share of your development?
It's definitely not any one thing. I've had a lot of really, really helpful people give me tips along the way. But they can tell you that, and that's great, but it's seat time.
Yeah.
It's all about seat time. You can have, like, I can tell you how to do particular maneuvers, but you're the one that has to make it work. And I wouldn't say like I'm some spectacular rider. I do a lot of riding. I do a lot of varied riding. I enjoy a challenge, but I definitely wouldn't describe myself as some expert.
Okay. So to kind of wrap this topic up, my question for you, you know, what advice would you have for somebody who might find themselves in your shoes from a few years back, kind of looking to get into the sport, maybe looking to buy that first bike?
I think you just have to own your decision. If you want to do it, do it. You live once. You don't get a redo. And, you know, young or old, just do it. Try it. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it anymore. There's a way out. You can sell the bike, but try. I think that's with anything. Whatever you're passionate about, just try.
Good advice. Good advice. Yeah, you're right. You can opt out if you don't like it. If you're not comfortable, you probably lose a little bit of money on the resale. Maybe not, but you can move on. But you never know till you try, right? And motorcycles have that. Motorcycles is one of those few things that have that way of hooking you. Like you said, you're on the back of the bike, you come around a corner, there's a mountain staring you in the face, and you're like, man, this feels right. I want to do more of this.
Yeah.
I think that's why I think that's why I'm still hooked. I want to keep coming back, right? I can't get enough of it.
There's always something, and I struggle with that on any adventure I'm on, whether it's street or dirt trails. I want to go just a little bit further because you don't know what's around the corner, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, that's how I discover a lot of new places, but unfortunately sometimes that can get me in trouble too. You just keep going around the next bend, and then the next thing you know what I mean? You've probably been there.
150-mile day can turn into a 300-mile day fast.
Yeah, definitely. So now you've been at it here for a handful of years, and what I've seen recently and a little bit last year is you've been on the snow bikes. So I haven't done it. I've ridden snowmobiles. I like it, but motorcycles and snow, all that's too much. That's too many machines for me. But I got to get a perspective from you. What's snow biking like compared to regular dirt biking?
It's not the same thing. Everybody out there is posting right now saying, oh, it's just like dirt biking. You're going to love it. It feels nothing like a dirt bike. There's times when it feels kind of like a wave runner. You're obviously on a dirt bike body, right? You've got your throttle, you've got your clutch, you're sitting on a dirt bike frame, but the front ski pulls and I stay flexed the whole time I'm riding. At least when I am starting, it pulls you around. That being said, I have had the best time of my life on the snow bike, and I've had times where I'm like, why am I here?
One thing I want to know about, I did some snowboarding, ultimately tore up my knee and said, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. But snowboarding in powder versus snowboarding on ice and falling on my ass, those were two radically different things. Now, my question would be, what's the snow bike like in the powder? That looks amazing, but what happens if you get into the hard stuff with that ski on the front, if you will?
Yeah, if you've been up on, at the resort and on the hills, you know that every day, literally every day, the snow is slightly different. So I've only been on snow bikes 3 times now. Last year was amazing. The first time I went, it was a bluebird day, and there was a solid base and like 1 to 2 feet of fresh powder, and there was amazing views, and luckily the guys I went with were really helpful. But I got told at the end, I was like, they told me it's not how it always is. It's not always that good.
Oh.
And I didn't believe them. I'm like, first time out, this is exactly how it is. So this year I was really hoping that I could get on a bike again, a snow bike. And luckily things just kind of came together. My buddy Jake had a spare kit, and my boyfriend Peter, he just decommissioned his 450 dual sport. So now I've got a bike to ride. And that's really, really awesome. But this year's not the same as last year. The snow's a little different. It's been really wet and heavy up in at least my neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent more time with snow up to our handlebars than we've spent on top of it.
Weird.
Yeah, if you stop, the bike just sinks. I'm 4th or 5th gear pinned and should be going 50 miles an hour, something like that, and the bike is reading at 28. Yeah, you have to pin it, and when it's that deep, you really have to pin it. Last time we went, I'd be lying if I told you it was a blast. It was not fun. A storm had just gone through, so there was downed trees everywhere, and it had also snowed. So you've got snow, trees, and more wet, heavy snow that you sink into.
Okay.
Coming up to trees, we had to saw a couple of them out of the way. We had to duck back into areas that really weren't conducive for us to be in, and just to get back on this Forest Service road that we were on. And the bikes would just sink, and you go to get them started and the track would dig. So, then you're hopping off the bikes, you're shoveling out. We spent more time shoveling than riding, I think.
Ooh, I don't know about
Yeah, no, it's a lot of work.
Okay. I'm curious. I mean, there's some different risk out there, obviously, riding the snow bike compared to, I think, what we all do most of the time. I mean, avalanches, the tree wells, widowmakers. What's that look like? I mean, are you guys riding with beacons? You're probably riding with shovels. Safety stuff, is it quite a bit different than a standard dual sport ride, for instance?
Just in that you have to be prepared for the specific type of sport you're doing. I mean, when I go dual sport, I'm fully prepared. I've always got a giant loop on, and it has tools in it, has tubes in it, has all the things. But snowbike's different. And the avalanche danger's definitely been in the front of my mind, just because there's already been some avalanche deaths this year, and it's a real thing. I do not have the right gear yet. I am working on that. Just like any other sport, it's expensive.
Yeah.
And it's expensive not just to buy the machine, but to buy the right gear. So I'm working on that. when we ride, we always have radios on us. One of the guys I ride with carries the inReach. So we're prepared in that regard. I've always got a shovel in my backpack, water, a way to make fire. That's super important. If you get screwed and you have to spend a night out there, probably want to be wearing, wool and not cotton because you're going to be wet, and you need a way to start fire. It sounds goofy, but I was watching one of those survival shows a few years ago, and they said you need 3 ways to make fire. That way, if the other 2 fail, you've always got an extra. That's a big one. Being prepared. And what's really neat is I've seen a lot of classes and clinics popping up. They must be aware that there's a rise in people out using the snow, whether it's in the backcountry skiing or snowmobiling or snow biking. But there's classes all over the place, and they're held at resorts, they're held at REI. There's a lot of good resources out there, and I can give you some of those links after we're done chatting to post with the cast if you want.
All right. Let's get back on dirt where I'm more comfortable. This whole building fires and spending the night in the snow. It's funny. I just read this book, and this is an amazing story. And I'm sorry off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of it, but this is a true story. World War II era. These guys crashed on Greenland or something, and they spent an insane amount of days out there exposed, and it was like -40.
Oh, jeez.
The things that they did to survive and the things they did to try to get, they were eventually located, but logistically getting to them and getting them, planes crashed trying to get to it. It was an incredible story.
Oh, wow.
But that's just a battle that cold overnight. That's a battle that I don't want to fight. That's sketchy. And I think I told this story on the podcast a while ago, but there was... years ago, it was like November 18th. It was my mom's birthday, and I was riding out at China Hat. I've been out there a million times, but I zigged when I should have zagged. I went the wrong way, and ultimately I ran out of gas. And that bad feeling in your stomach you get when you're in deep shit. I got that feeling, and there was somebody else with me, and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to drag him into this. So I sent him on his way with a map back to where the truck was located, and I think we were 18 miles from the vehicle, and he'd never been there before. So the reality is the likelihood of him finding the truck and finding me again was very unlikely. And I just gotten this 2006 CRF 450, brand new, so I was really hard-headed. I'm like, I'm not leaving this thing anywhere. So I pushed it for a few miles, ultimately got really cold and sweaty and had to ditch the bike. But there were times out there in the dark. I actually sat down with the bike in the dark for maybe an hour. And man, I wish I would have had something to start a fire, because I would have lit my bike on fire. I was so damn cold. And, I could hear the sticks breaking around me. There were animals moving around. I didn't know what was out there. You couldn't see. I didn't have a light. And man, it was super, super sketchy. Eventually I got on my feet and I just started walking, but the foam in my goggles was cold and freezing. So I ripped that out. My helmet liner was cold and freezing. I ripped that out. I was licking snow off my helmet for hydration. And again, I'm probably lucky I didn't have a lighter, because I would have lit that bike on fire. And ultimately I walked out, and some people found me in the middle of the night. And I guarantee you've never seen anybody drink 2 beers so fast in your life. The nerves were insane.
It's amazing how being prepared, and not just prepared for what you think could happen, but for everything. And maybe that's overkill, but being prepared goes a long ways.
No, you're right, because if you fast forward, I think it was 2017, I got a flat way out there right before dark. Mm-hmm. And I had everything I needed, and I was able to swap it out and come home. But if I hadn't had that stuff, I'd have been in the same situation again. And it's just kind of one of those dead spots, no cell service. Who's going to come, it was one of those things. So luckily I've kind of changed my ways, because when we used to off-road ride, and we were riding in groups, but you'd be lucky if we were carrying an 8 millimeter wrench or something. We were just out there off-road riding. We weren't making many adjustments or working on stuff. But it's funny how things have changed and how I've kind of shifted, like you said, towards what could happen in regard to preparation.
Yeah, and the areas I'm enjoying myself the most are easily the most dangerous. Sheer cliffs and trails barely wide enough for your tires to get through. But the consequences are huge. And, one of the areas that I ride frequently in, a guy went down a really, really hard trail and encountered snow and kind of lost track of where he was at and had to camp out there. And he was cold, but he was able to start a fire. But, riding with a buddy and being prepared and, maybe your backpack's a little heavier. Maybe you've got a loop on your bike. It's really important. It's the difference between having to hike out if you can, depending on how far you can hike in a day, and being at home where it's warm.
Yeah. Yeah, there was I'm sure you've ridden there. This place is no mystery, but Shotgun Creek, maybe you haven't ridden there.
I have not.
Okay, so Shotgun Creek used to be my favorite place to ride in the world before it really became legitimate OHV area and Weyerhaeuser or whoever closed all the trails. It was just single track for hundreds of miles. It was amazing. But there was trails there where you were like, hey, you don't go down there because you can't get back out type situation, Yeah. And It's funny. I actually have a friend who found himself in a similar situation in the Coast Range a few years ago. And he had to go walk out, come back the next day with like a chainsaw winch and some friends to get his bike out of a hole. So you just never know when you're talking about the remote areas that you're riding. You really never know what could happen.
No, and there's not cell service out there. You're not getting help unless you have a beacon. Yeah,
and I don't know what it is about you guys riding these sheer cliffs and stuff. I cannot stomach that stuff at all. That's so foreign to me.
I ride slowly and carefully, and if I want to stop and look, I stop and look.
Yeah. And I think, kind of shifting gears here, we've all seen that, like, on your social media account. I want to commend you. Like, your stories are very interesting. Cool photos, amazing stories within the story. But you definitely have a theme to your stories. And I think it's like responsible writing, advocacy for that, no geotagging. When I'm here I am kind of assessing basically your Instagram profile. Am I on track? Are you trying to, I don't know if there's a better word than influence, but influence some people out there who follow you or might see your posts to maybe make some better decisions?
Yeah, I think it's about education. What you see is what you get with me. I'm passionate about it, and I'm passionate about it because I'm passionate about the sport. I don't want to see our trails taken away, and a lot of the behavior I'm seeing, and not just with motorists, but with all user groups,
sure, is
irresponsible use, illegal things happening, and just poor stewardship.
No, and I like your comment there. Not just, it ties out into all groups. I could speak on behalf of people who backpack, hike, whatever. This area here that I live in Bend is, it gets a lot of use, and it's starting to become really visible.
Yes.
But I like your message because, I think things like this start out small and build over time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a different mindset than I had a couple of years ago. I'm seeing the impact across the board, and it's kind of concerning because these places are changing, and a lot of the time it's for the worse, unfortunately. And I don't know that anybody's out there doing anything wrong intentionally.
I disagree with you.
Okay, let's hear that.
Yeah, and constructive conversation. Let's go back and forth about it, and definitely willing to hear your side. But people know better. Hikers know better. You don't leave dog poop on the side of the trail. You pick it up, you pack it out. Like, if your grandma was watching, would she be proud? Probably not. And you're seeing it with motorists. They're out on the trails, and they're spinning tires, and they're laughing, and they're posting videos for other people to see of them doing that. They're cutting switchbacks. They're doing stuff they know they shouldn't do. And when they're confronted, they acknowledge that they're doing stuff they shouldn't do. Hopefully with education and them realizing the consequences, some of these behaviors will change.
Okay. Yeah, you got me there. I think I'm probably being too soft. Probably giving too many people the benefit of the doubt. But there are people out there who, let's be honest, I can go on YouTube and search motorcycle anything, and I can see people riding places that clearly are not legal to ride, right? It's
yes.
For the most part across the board, it's not legal to ride a dirt bike, an off-road bike, where it's not a designated OHV area. Definitely not out through the middle of whatever for your hard enduro fix, right? So,
right, and you're seeing huge motorcycle editorials posting these pictures of off-road riding, but where's the trail? And
yeah, it's 2 miles back.
Right, but this area is really pretty, and there's a cool log here so that it looks cool. But it's sending the wrong message and setting an example for so many people. So hopefully I can come through and I can, kind of lay out what we're supposed to do. And that's not me creating the rules, right? That's the Forest Service, that's the state. And hopefully once people realize what we're supposed to be doing, the behavioral change.
It'll shift. And I think this goes back to the front of our conversation where you're talking about people who are getting into the sport. Again, if I go on YouTube and that's what I see, we're probably not off on the right foot, right?
Right. Yeah, there's so much to the responsible riding, but some of it should be pretty basic. Go prepared. Make sure your bike has a spark arrestor so you don't burn down the whole forest.
That's my pet peeve, by the way.
Yeah, and people they assume when they go out and buy a brand new KTM that it has it on the stock pipe. It does not. You need to check your pipes, and you need to see if it's approved by the Forest Service. It'll say right on there, like, Forest Service spark arrestor approved. It's on there, but check it before you go out.
Yeah, and if your bike doesn't come with one, any, FMF, Pro Circuit, all the major exhaust manufacturers sell one.
Yeah, and that's not too expensive of a fix to keep our forests from getting burned down and then running out of trails to use.
And of course, the cost of a spark arrestor is minimal compared to the cost of a ticket, perhaps, or the cost of getting sued for burning down a forest. And we can ask that kid who set the gorge on fire. I'm not sure how all that shook out, but it wasn't pretty.
It was a 15-year-old kid that threw a firework. He was confronted by other people out on the trail not to do that, and he did it anyway. And the gorge, it'll come back, but it's going to take a long time for it to come back. And it was one of the most beautiful places.
Yeah, and that was, for a kid, that was an unfortunate decision too. I mean, that's just going to follow him for the rest of his life. Not just financially, but...
Right, and what he doesn't realize is it affected more than him. And I think that's important for the moto community, getting back to that, to understand is that it's not just your actions. It's not just you going off trail. It reflects on the moto community as a whole. And if that's what people think all of us are out there doing, it's going to get taken away for all of us.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. I used to ride in a private area where we basically had to gain permission, but We do work parties, repair trails, so on and so forth throughout the year. And, back in the day, like our number one enemy, unfortunately, was people who like to go out and take 4-wheel drives and, whatever they call it, mudding, 4-wheeling, whatever, even though they were in vehicles and creating those types of ruts and whatnot, it still reflected on us as dirt bikers. And a lot of times in a lot of places, that's ultimately what got the stuff shut down, was the impact from those guys, not necessarily the riding. But I mean, I think now there's a lot of means for getting out in the woods and a lot of means for impact. So we're kind of getting hit from a lot of angles, and that's not to excuse the dirt bikers from the stupid stuff that we do from time to time out there too. But
right. Yeah, no, we're definitely seeing an influx of people out in the woods, and you got to ask yourself, can the area handle the influx? I think we're going to have to try really hard moving forward to think about our actions. They're amplified now. It's not just you and me out there. It's the other 20 people camping in the same area, hiking the same trails, riding the same trails.
Yeah, I've seen that stretching out even further, maybe over the past 10 years. I used to ride China Hat, East Fort Rock all the time, and there was nobody out there. And now, I mean, it's probably, for the most part right now, snow and ice, but there's still probably people out there today. There's probably people out there.
I know there's people out there today.
Yeah, you can't go out there at any time, and it's just, there's just a lot more people out there. That is the biggest shift I've seen. More people, more impact, and, whereas before maybe you had 1 or 2 bad seeds, now you got 11 or 12. And maybe largely in part due to social media, right?
I think it plays a bigger role than most are willing to give it credit for. I'm out on social media. I'm out there and I'm active and I'm posting and I'm showing people that I'm out there riding. And if we're sending the wrong message, a lot of people are going to see it.
Yeah, you're right. And that's just the environment we're living in now, the environment that we're working with in regard to social media. Every post has an opportunity to go viral, be shared by thousands of accounts, be seen by hundreds of thousands of people. But in the same sentence, if you've got a different message, if you've got the right message, you have that same opportunity too. So I see good and bad. And again, I think that's just kind of the environment that we're in now. Social media, for better or for worse, or for both really, has really changed the landscape. Well, one last thing I want to ask you about here before we get out of the social media thing. It plays right into this, but the geotagging. I think you spent a fair amount of time. You spent you spent a fair amount of time. I don't want to say it, but talking about how we shouldn't geotag a lot of these locations. So why don't you just share with the listeners kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a loaded one, and the geotagging is a hot topic. People either completely agree and see what you're talking about, or they're mad that you won't share a location and that you're being elitist and keeping it secret. The only thing I'm asking is for you to think about the impact of what you're sharing. It doesn't hurt to do some research and find your own maps and find your own trails. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of that. I sit in front of Google and look at Google Earth, and I open up state maps and forest maps and figure out riding from there. I don't just go to the OHV parks that everybody names. But when I'm doing that research, I'm encountering forest rules and regulations. There's burn bans. Sometimes there will be motorized closures, but I'm encountering information that's educational before I go ride.
Yeah, I think to sum it up, like, you're right. Let's think about the impact of tagging where you are, right? Do you want 27,000 people to go there? Can that particular trail, spot, area handle an influx of people? Does everybody need to know about that? And I'm on board with you. Why don't we all get out there and discover our own places, create our own adventures? My next podcast for this show is actually going to be me walking people through how to use Google Maps and some other software to kind of create their own rides, right? And I think that's what people need to do. And if they got out there and they created their own stuff and found their own little spots, they may think twice about just blasting out where they're at, right? As opposed to downloading a track that somebody else created, riding to this cool spot, paying for GPX tracks or whatever, and just blasting it out to the masses, right?
Oh yeah. No, I've got a beef with that. And I talked to a guy the other day on Facebook. So I'm active on Instagram. I'm active on Facebook. But this guy had posted on Facebook this washed out, rutted out area on the trails. And I commented, I was like, let's get a big trail party out there and get that fixed and get that remedied. And his comment was, nah, it's not worth it. These trails are too far gone. Like, what? No, you need to take pride in those trails that are in your backyard and fix them instead of going to somebody else's backyard and riding their trails. It just made me furious. That's the wrong attitude.
Those are my favorite trails to rehab.
Yeah, because then you see the dramatic difference and ride the dramatic difference. But it's that attitude that's a problem. Like, even if everybody just did 15, 20 minutes of maintenance on a ride, it would make a huge difference. I was out riding with a buddy. It was the last ride of the season in the area I really enjoy. And there was a lot of trees down. A storm had gone through, snow had melted. It was dry enough to ride, but trees had gone down. And this buddy drove 3 hours to come ride. And we came to the first tree and there was a go around. Somebody had created a path off trail. There was a go around, but we stopped and we got off our bike and got out the hand saws and got it done. And we came to half a dozen more trees like that. And we cut all of them out of the way. And he didn't complain. Not once did he complain. He saw go-arounds. He knew that we could pop up over him. But he never once complained. He got off his bike, helped me saw, cheered me on. We made light of the situation. But it took 3 hours out of his ride that day. He drove 3 hours to go ride, had 3 hours taken off the ride, and then drove 3 hours home and didn't complain about doing that trail maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah, for some of us, it's just about being out there. If it's 10 miles, if it's 100 miles, right? So that was the right mindset.
Right. And repairing the trails. He knows just as well as I do that the Forest Service will shut them down. People don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear that the law is involved, but that's the reality. And, I've seen signs posted in the forest that here's the code, don't do this, here's the fine. And the threat at the bottom is the trails will be shut down if it's persistent. It's just a fact.
Yeah, and if people don't believe that, they can email me. I can list off 12 riding areas that have been closed down over the past 20 years.
Yes.
Due to that kind of behavior, other political agendas.
Right.
And you know what? It does. Here's the great thing about the people that oppose us. They'll have photos of people doing stupid shit in Moab, and tie that into something that's happening here in the Pacific Northwest, and say, well, this is how these people are behaving. So, again, what you're doing out there, it does have an impact, and probably greater than you suspect.
Yep.
On to something lighter. Let's get.
The geo-tagging is a hot topic, and
definitely. And I see both sides. So here's the thing: social media. You want my honest opinion? It kind of sucks. Like, it's wired it's wired to keep you on it, to make you use it, right?
Right.
It's like
It's wired for popularity.
It's like the perfect drug, and we all know we're all on there, and there's a little bit of vanity in here. Look, if you geotag popular spots, your posts have a tendency to get more reach, more engagement, more interaction. So it's kind of like this perfect storm. So,
well, and then you make friends because people want to talk about it. They want to get the details, and it's a popularity thing.
It's rewarding. So,
yeah, look where I went. I did it.
Yeah. So I understand why people do it, and I'm not going to beat you up for doing it. I get it. But also, I'm concerned about some of these sensitive areas, and then areas that maybe I wouldn't deem sensitive just becoming more and more sensitive as they get overrun. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yep. No, I'm with you.
Okay. Let's
kind of something lighter.
Something lighter. Let's something bigger though. I posed this question to you, so I expect you'll have a very good answer for me. But if you could get out there and ride anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh man,
it's tough.
It is. So, all right. Everybody's going to want to hear about some international single track trip that I want to go do or cross country dual sport route. But I generally follow my heart. It sounds really corny, but whatever my heart wants at that point in time is what I go do. So I don't have any one place in mind. It's kind of whatever strikes me at that point in time, and then I go do it. I don't talk about it. I go do it. But yeah, it's all about whatever's going to make you happy in that moment. Sometimes that's sun. Sometimes that's a street ride. Sometimes that's getting out there and being away from the masses. Sometimes that's finding cool food spots and creating a loop. Yeah, and it's easy to look to the internet for inspiration and say, oh, they went to Mongolia. That's exactly where I want to go. I want to do it my way. I don't want to, like you said, buy some guy's GPX tracks and ride his exact route and camp where he camped. And I want to do my own research. I want to find my own route and go somewhere because it'll make me happy, not because it looks like the ultimate spot.
Well, there's something rewarding to creating your own adventure, if you will, right? It almost feels like you're the first person who's done it that way.
It makes it more special.
Yeah, and sometimes it's maybe it's not even a special ride or whatever, but it's the people, or like you said, the food or whatever. There's a lot of elements to a good ride.
Right. It just depends on what you want.
One of my last questions. I got a couple for you. Are there any? I think you've got 2 or 3 bikes. Are there any bikes out there right now that you're looking at and you're going, man, I wish I could try that or ride that?
So I've got a bike problem. I've got 5 to my name currently.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, oops. I like having the right bike for the right ride. My 350 is arguably my favorite bike because it does everything. But I've got a street bike. I love that bike. I go up and down the coast and it just feels good. And then I've got a 2-stroke in the garage that I haven't touched since last year. I bought my 350.
2-stroke do you have? What 2-stroke
do you
have?
I have a 2007 200XC.
Oh, right on. Okay.
It's feisty.
Yeah.
And I rode it for a couple years, really, really loved it, but bought my 350 and that's just the bike I want to take. But riding my boyfriend's new 250, I'm going, oh, it'd be so nice to have a 250 or a 300.
Oh, he's on a 2-stroke?
He is.
Yeah.
And, I rode my buddy Zach's 300 and brand new 2019, and it feels really good. But I love my 350. I don't know. But if I got a new bike, it'd probably be a new 2-stroke.
Yeah, they're kind of drawing me back in too. I'm usually on a dual sport because, like you said, like the 350 and for me 500, super versatile. Right. Like, yeah. It's not the perfect single track weapon. I would prefer a 300 or a 250 maybe, but it gets the job done. But these 2-strokes, they're making it hard to not take a good hard look at them again. So
don't discount the heavy 4-strokes. I'm out there riding the Cliffy single track on my 350. But, it's like your style changes. And maybe we're coming up on the 2-stroke style.
Interesting. I spent the fall riding my 450 quite a bit on the trails and single track. And I'm like, man, I'm not getting any younger here. I really don't need this kind of power. And KTM's got these TPI models. There's some really good looking 2-strokes out there these days. So I don't know. That may be the next bike. I'm not totally sure yet. Or that new Husqvarna adventure bike, that 900 or whatever. That looks pretty good. Last question for me, because this thing's going long. Have you got any sponsors you want to plug before we get out of here?
Yeah, there's great products out there. The ones that I'm absolutely in love with. My dealer. I have a very honest, no muss, no fuss dealer that I work with, Gray Area KTM down in Springfield. They're great. They tell you how it is. They tell you what you can do if you need your bike fixed, or, they're not jerking you around. And I've experienced that with a couple dealers. And after working with Gray Area, I won't go anywhere else. And then Giant Loop. Giant Loop helps me carry my tools and stay prepared and be able to enjoy the experience without it all on my back. And then Climb. Climb has saved me on more than one occasion. I've gone down on the road in my gear and there's barely a scuff. But also out snow biking, I was waist deep in the snow and rained on, and I was dry. So there's definitely some great products out there. And most of them are happy to talk to you online if you've got questions, and really personable.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it. You've been to the Giant Loop ride at Crystal Clear, haven't you? What'd you think of that? I have.
It was easily the best rally I've been to. And I've been to a few, both with, more local groups, and then KTM and the Wander Rally and the Giant Loop Rally. But the Giant Loop Rally was nice too. It wasn't super huge. So you really got a chance to connect with a lot of people there.
Yeah, I think they're going on like their 9th year this year.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Harold's been at it for a while. He knows what he's doing, so that's good.
And he's a great guy, and I love the fact that he's local and he's kind of pioneered the product.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Anna. Thank you for coming on the show and being a guest. Listeners, if you want to follow Anna, at Anna Baklund on Instagram, or if you just have any questions for her. I know we covered a lot of stuff today, and she has a wealth of knowledge. Now, I know everybody's wondering about the giveaway, the Giant Loop Zigzag handlebar bag that I promised you, and we're going to get to that. I know we just spent a bunch of time talking about how great the guys at Giant Loop are. And Bruce Finley, you're one of my new YouTube subscribers, so when you hear this, get a hold of me, get your address, and I will ship you that Giant Loop Zigzag handlebar bag. So thanks for playing, guys. Thank you for supporting us. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. It's February 1st, and our next episode will drop February 10th. Got some more great guests coming up, some other episodes. So looking forward to keeping this thing moving. We'll see you guys next week.